Okay, you ready? Alright, so here we are, Orc Tactical Team. We got Malorian and we got He-Man. And what we're going to be talking about today is the new vampire accounts and dealing with all their ghosts. This came from a viewer request saying, hey, you know, I'm getting ready for tournaments. I'm going to be seeing vampire accounts. What should I do to my army list to make sure it's ready? You know, take a look at this list. Is it prepared? And we're going to be talking about what you need to be having in your list. So, He-Man, are you scared of ghosts? No? Why not? Show me, what would you do to a ghost again? That's it, just do that. If you ever see vampire accounts, just go. Done, you win the game. But more seriously, when you're starting to look at vampire accounts, they could come up with some nasty lists. We're talking ones where, you know, you got all the spirit hosts in there, tons of Karn wraiths, anything that's an actual unit can have the front rank full of those new heroes that are ethereal, be the Karn wraith or the Banshee. So, I mean, if you don't have magical weapons, they can take Kremler so that their HQ or their generals even ethereal. So, I mean, it can be a huge pain. And so I see a lot of people changing their lists now. They're making sure they got a lot of magic weapons, and really that's it, just changing it up. So, you know, where a lot of times you take great weapons, boom, let's throw in these cheap little magic weapons here. I'll add in another character, give him another magical weapon. Now, He-Man, would you take another character just to fight ghosts? No? Why not? Because it's kind of a waste, that's right. So, what this really comes down to is you gotta think of it this way. If you're going into a tournament, what's actually your odds of going up against a vampire accounts player? Well, you know, depending on the size of the tournament and your meta, you probably might expect to see maybe one vampire account game per tournament, right? Just maybe one game. Now, of that, how many of them do you think are going to spam the ethereal? I mean, again, it all comes down to your meta and all that type of stuff, but probably it's going to be very rare. I mean, just throwing out a number there, maybe 1 in every 15 vampire count lists will be an ethereal spam. And so what you really have to think about is, how many points am I throwing in for this very unlikely event? This is kind of like before when I was talking about taking banners and musicians, where sure, they seem to help quite a bit, but if you think of over the course of the game how much benefit they're giving you for those very rare occurrences, you're actually paying quite a bit. And especially when you're looking at how you're setting up your characters, I mean, people, instead of taking a more effective character, be it with a great weapon or whatever build, they're changing them so that they have these magical weapons. And this can completely mess up your builds, where, okay, usually I'm going to be going all defensive, oh, but now I need to have this magical weapon, so I got to change this. Or they'll add in new characters, like you said. Oh, now I need to have this new guy. It's just like, this is my ghost hunter, so if I ever have to do that, I got this guy. And we're talking about characters that are like 150 points for this event that's going to come up 1 in every 60 games, maybe, type thing, right? And so I think that's the big thing going into a tournament. It's just, don't waste those points. It could happen that you're going to be up against the ghost armies, but chances are that you're not going to be. Now, here's a big reason why they're also going to be trying to stay out, is that a lot of people, if you're going into a tournament and you're trying to win, well, you want to have to something that's probably going to be more solid against everybody. And of course, if you're going for an all ethereal list and you end up being against demons or a tree army or something like that, you're screwed. So guys like this, you know, they're taking a huge risk. So, I mean, you're not going to really probably be seeing these in the upper tables. I mean, after you got like 3 games in, these guys probably have found a bad matchup at some point and they're down more around the middle of the pack. Whereas you just take your normal strong list, you're just going to be above all that garbage anyway. Now, that doesn't mean you should be going into these things completely unprepared. There are things that you can always be throwing in there just to be sure. So, as always, I mean, you're probably going to be having your level 4 with magic. A lot of them have magic missiles. So, of course, if you're ever against a vampire accounts army that does have that, boom, you just make sure to try and take that magic missile if it's applicable. Otherwise, I mean, there's always the whole thing too, where if you have your unit that just ties things up, you can just do that. You know, if you got a big unit of wraiths coming at you, just tie them up and forget them. Concentrate on everything else. Some other things you actually can do, though, that where you actually are adding into your list just for vampire counts, which aren't too bad, is small little things like 5-point weapons. If you have some little character that's usually just like a BSB that hides in the back or something, and you find yourself with 5 extra points, sure, why not? Let's put 5 points of gear on this guy, so just in case, he can go to the front and start doing some killing. You know, just like 5 points isn't that bad. The other thing you could be looking at is, of course, the fireball ring. This is something where, especially if you don't run a secondary mage, it's always nice to have a little secondary thing like that anyway, just so you can be using more dice on it, or in case your caster gets shut down. And then, of course, if you're ever against Hex Race or something, boom, fireball to the face, and you can just really damage the unit. And the nice thing about this as well is that if you're against any other army, it's probably going to be useful, just trying to shoot off their chaff and stuff like that. So going back, just to try and really sum this up, really your odds of facing this ethereal army of doom is very, very low. If it does come up, there's ways where you can always try and deal with it. Of course, we have the draw tactics that we've talked about way before, but usually if you do come up against vampire counts, they're maybe going to have 1, maybe 2 ethereal units, and the magic that you normally have, or the bogged down units that you normally have, is probably all you need. And if you really want to add just a tiny bit more, add maybe a 5-point weapon on a guy that usually doesn't have something else. Don't be breaking up your super builds, don't be adding in new characters, because over the long run, if you say this will be worth while once in every 60 games, you basically have to take that cost and times by 60. This thing's not really worthwhile. So there you go. Hope that helps, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.